You've probably seen this photo before. A South Vietnamese officer pointing a gun at a prisoner's head. A split second earlier, he pulled the trigger.
This picture, called the Saigon Execution, was taken in 1968 by photographer Eddie Adams. It became one of the most powerful and shocking images of the whole Vietnam War. It even won a Pulitzer Prize, and it changed how millions of people saw the war. And the picture haunted the man who took it for the rest of his life.
So here's the story behind that photo, what really happened that day and why this single image might have helped turn the tide of the entire Vietnam War. During the Vietnam War, battles weren't just fought on the ground. They were also fought on TV screens and in newspapers.
The United States spent millions on programs to win hearts and minds in South Vietnam, trying to convince people that they were the good guys. But meanwhile, the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong told their own story, the underdog fighting against the world's biggest superpower.
And then you had the journalists, photographers and reporters showing the world what was really happening. As more photos of the war came out, people back home started asking, wait, are we actually the good guys here? In January 1968, everything changed. During the Vietnamese New Year, called Tet, communist forces launched surprise attacks all across South Vietnam. They even hit the US Embassy in Saigon. For Americans watching the news, it was shocking because President Lyndon Johnson had just told everyone the war was almost won.
General, how would you assess yesterday's activities and today's? What is the enemy doing? Are these major attacks or...
That's EOD setting off a couple of M79 duds, I believe. The enemy very deceitfully has taken advantage of the Tet truce in order to create maximum consternation within South Vietnam, particularly in the populated areas.
Even though the offensive was a huge loss for the communists, where tens of thousands of them were killed, it still made the US and its allies look weak and unprepared. And right in the middle of all that chaos, a photographer named Eddie Adams was about to take one of the most famous and controversial photos of the 20th century.
On February 1st, 1968, Adams was following South Vietnamese troops in Saigon when they brought in a handcuffed prisoner, a Viet Cong officer named Nguyễn Van Lem. Adams thought they were going to question him, but then, out of nowhere, General Nguyen Loc Lan, the South Vietnamese police chief, walked up, pulled out his pistol and shot the man in the head. Adams snapped the photo at that exact instant, the moment of death, frozen forever. He later said himself, quote,
he went over and I seen him go for his pistol. Well, when somebody goes for their pistol, they normally threaten. I've taken pictures like that, somebody threatening somebody, you know, do this or I'm going to shoot you, and nothing ever happens. So I seen him go for his pistol. As soon as he raised his pistol, I took one frame. And that was the instant that he shot him. And I had no idea that he was going to do this.
The next day, the image was on front pages all over the world. People were horrified. To many Americans, the photo was proof that the US was supporting a corrupt, brutal regime.
It completely changed the conversation about the war. Suddenly people weren't just asking if America could win, they were asking, should we even be there in Vietnam? Eddie Adams won the Pulitzer Prize for the photo, but he always had mixed feelings about it.
He once said, quote, "Two people died in that photo. The man who was shot and the general. The general killed the Viet Cong, and I killed the general with my camera. So, who was General Luan? Well, he wasn't just a random soldier. He was a fighter pilot trained in France and the US, and close friends with the South Vietnamese Prime Minister. He spent years fighting the Viet Cong and had a reputation of being tough, maybe even a bit too tough. But the photo didn't tell the whole story. According to later accounts, including historian Max Hastings, Lem had just murdered South Vietnamese Lieutenant Colonel Nguyen Tuan, his wife, 6 children and an elderly mother. The family had been observing the Lunar New Year ceasefire when they were executed. To Luan, Lem wasn't a prisoner of war. He was a murderer caught red-handed. The act, though brutal, came from rage and loss rather than pure cruelty. Even the photographer, Eddie Adams, later regretted taking the picture, writing, quote, "Photographs are only half-truths. What it didn't show was, what would you do if you were the general that day?"
After the war ended and Saigon fell in 1975, Lone fled to the United States. There in the United States, he opened a small pizzeria in Virginia, trying to live a quiet life. But the photo followed him everywhere. Some people called him a war criminal, and others saw him as a man who had done what he thought was necessary.
Years later, when the United States government tried to deport Luan, Eddie Adams, the man who took the photo, actually defended him. He testified that the image didn't tell the full story, and he even apologized to Luan in person. They even eventually became friends. Adams said he learned something important from that photo. Quote, "Photographs are powerful. People believe them, but they don't always show the whole truth."
The Saigon Execution Photo didn't lose the Vietnam War by itself, of course, but it definitely helped change how people saw the war. It showed how one single image can shift public opinion, question morality, and literally change history. And decades later, people still debate what it means. Was it an act of justice or pure brutality? Maybe the real answer lies somewhere in between. So I want to thank you guys for watching this video. Something different on a topic that I've never discussed before, the Vietnam War. I am trying to do some more videos about the Vietnam War because my friend Sean, he sort of wiggled me in through that era of history. So in the future you could probably expect more Vietnam content. If you like it, please leave a like. And if you want to support my work, I got a Patreon. I'll put a link in the description of my Patreon where you can support me there. And this was the first Vietnam video on my YouTube channel. And we'll close the video with that. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Salute.